Hello, Alice.
Good morning.
Hello, Alice. I wonder if my voice is even going to work.
Hi, Melissa. It's Ginny and Alice.
And it's Sunday, and it's steely grey skies outside, and it's really quiet. My kids are asleep still. It's 9:30, but they're teens. What makes family, I suppose. That was, and how do we hold that thread as the world all goes whoo around us? There's been COVID everywhere. Everyone's been sick with COVID.
We're in sort of strife in this, particularly in Queensland. We haven't had COVID, and on Monday the border opens. We've had 2,000 cases, 2 years, and 7 deaths. And on Monday they go from COVID zero policy to let's live with COVID, but we've never lived with COVID.
Saskia's had COVID, which I'm really upset about, and Eva is only just better than she's been, having had COVID in August. And I'm very frustrated that I haven't been given the choice to protect them. Saskia's been forced back to school with where nobody here is vaccinated, and they haven't had any proper mitigating measures. They've just all been piled in full numbers.
Right. I love it. I love just these unexpected differences, and you may speak the same language, but it is so different.
Well, you're going to see what happens all of a sudden.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good to see what happens. So we're very pleased that we've got a house sit for a month with air conditioning and a lovely dog called Denzel. Denzel dog. Yes. Oh. Denzel dog.
Is he a big dog or a little dog?
What's he like? What size dog?
Big doggy.
Big one. So again, there's a different logic to what's happening here.
That's what I think is fascinating. It creates these cultural identities of where people will follow fake news, and it's very interesting because yes, there's been so much fake news, and that has driven a lot of the anti-vax agenda. But on the other hand, there's been so much control. You're not allowed to share anything about any adverse reactions. You're not allowed to use the word vaccine in any of Facebook groups, for example. The Guardian is incredibly pro-vax, doesn't have anything on the other side. If you sift through it and you try to search for different balanced opinions. So all the groups I'm in that are questioning things, they have to call things different names, or they write different words until it gets filtered out. And a lot of people are moving on to Telegram. So I think what happens is you start creating this undercurrent, and then that's even more unsafe in a way. The dark web of all fall down.
I mean, the relationship between that and what's happening politically and what lies behind it around climate change and the even bigger problems.
It's interesting watching the UK. I mean, I'd be interested to know how it's sort of affecting your family's mental health in a way, and how you're coping.
Yeah, it's been really weird because we're all living in slightly different realities, and I'm trying to hold with that. So I've been really health conscious, and I'm quite conscious about what I do. I do sometimes do higher risk things because I'm human, but I minimize my contacts. I keep off public transport. I haven't been to anything big for a really long time.
Yeah.
And then there's Eva, who has just finished school, loves to perform, cannot live without contact. She had COVID in the summer. It's been really upsetting to not feel protected from COVID. And where it has felt really upsetting was for Saskia, who's 15 now, has been living in COVID since she had just turned 14. So
through school, that part of school as well.
Yeah, so she's had, a year and a half of pretty much living in her room, not having any social, no sport, no extracurricular. Doing school was either online, and for the first part, the teachers in the state school wouldn't do it because they were like, well, we don't have digital equity, and oh God, what about the ethical things? We can't have children in their bedrooms, we can't have children who aren't dressed. And so there was huge delays where basically there wasn't really any education going on.
I think you've just touched on something which I think is really important, is actually that's something about our work about multiple realities. It's how do you it's almost the Rosie Braidotti on center and periphery, and this entanglement idea, and this sort of dance, a weave, isn't it? How do you be the eye? I mean, the eye, that's the Judith Butler quote that I really like. The eye is not alone, basically. I can't remember. It's an excellent quote. Basically, you can't be one. You can't be yourself without relation to others. Memmy's coffee. Yeah, this is my coffee.
Oh, lucky.
So basically, you're living in this spinning plates, isn't it? But it's not plates, because it's much more this weave all around you.
Yeah.
Got to survive without falling over.
Yeah. It's very hard because we're in these very dark times.
It's very tricky, because there are also lots of stories about the forcing of, and all they say, some of it's fake news, but we're not sure, Indigenous communities being locked down and sort of pushed, coerced towards vaccination because the vaccination rates are lower, and people live in more remote communities in lots of people in one house. So it's potentially going to spread more. And
I think this idea of, how do you go on through the transition? Because I think we're now in an age of very profound uncertainty and transition. And raising our little
we've almost finished the bluebees.
So again, there's a different logic to what's happening here.
That's what I think is fascinating. It creates these cultural identities. That's another thing in Australia. Everyone's moved to Queensland, so there's no rentals.
Okay, and is that because it's freer there?
It was freer until
years ago.
Yeah, and there was no COVID, so people were buying houses unseen just to move. So it's a very interesting dance, because we're actually continually homeless, and we could get a rental, I suppose. I think we're distracted by so many other things that I'll tell you what, I'm going to show you something very exciting away from all the madness and anxiety. Look, I wrote a book.
I know, I've seen it. So exciting.
But it's very interesting how Boz's dissertation for his master's was working with people who were homeless and realising in his conclusions of his autoethnography about the dance that him and his family have been doing.
Okay, so what's his family doing?
Us. We're his family.
Sorry. I forget that. I still think that about myself as well.
Yeah, no.
Funny, isn't it?
Ginny's learned the word "my family," and I'm like, oh yeah, that's us.
Well, one of the things that happened to us because of COVID and all the restrictions, when COVID hit and you weren't allowed to have any adults, only family members in the house, and the exceptions that applied to us were, ex-partners. The children's father. So their father, my ex, becomes like the only adult in the world that I'm allowed to have dinner. All the fucking people. It's like, and when there was all that kind of stress and anxiety at the beginning, there was that sort of like, so well, do you want to have dinner then? Because
about to talk to.
Yeah, so you or no one. And anyway, we ended up having Christmas with him and his girlfriend and us here at my house, and it was great. It was actually the first time that we were the grown-up having our own Christmas in our own house. Instead of kind of shipping ourselves around to kind of ease in and meet whoever we're meant to be with. And we're going to do it again this year. It was kind of like, oh, let's do this.
That's nice. Yeah. Well, isn't that funny? Isn't it what is immediate family? It changes, doesn't it? And the relationships change.
This is what it is. Actually, well, that's the truth of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the amount of time that we all spend, poring over details about COVID, when actually, certainly here, we've got an incredibly wayward government.
We're in these dark times where we're so almost, I don't know if it's political, we're almost distracted by COVID to ignore the imminent climate disaster.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it's something that came up that you mentioned, and that's been sitting with me, and it's the truth that really all the energy we're spending in these negative angles and these anxious cycles, we're not putting that energy into the climate change and trying to make sure that activism is in that space. But at the same time, with freedoms being impacted.
Yeah, the education system here feels very under threat, more than our personal freedoms, which, well, that's one thing about the very right-wing government that we have, is it's a cornerstone for them, personal choice.
Yes, yeah.
They're never
Oh,
going to.
so neoliberal though, isn't it? I realised that when I was working on
I can't stand it, but and yet, you know what kind of a creature you're dealing with. Yeah.
And I think that was one of my struggles in all my work is I like choice. And how do I struggle with, like, I don't like countries, education policies like Finland, where they have got rid of all other schools except for the state school because there is then no choice. But they've actually created choice and unintentionally now because catchments, people move. So
people self-select they socially segregate themselves. People do this. People will always do this. People are tribal.
Yeah, and this is one of the things in terms of freedoms I realised the other day. I published this book in being a school tourist, but from January, I can't go into a school again at the moment with current policy in Queensland.
Okay. Yes.
So
you need to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an exception. Is there something about how it's been done, the political context, the sense of being controlled and coerced?
Yeah, and I think the speed that it's come through has made people anxious. And
people saying this is too novel.
The dialogue of the country. So in the UK, it was very much, from a whole year now, get this vaccine. Whereas here, it was, don't get it, it's new, we're watching. And then in our winter, sort of July, August time, they all panicked. We've got COVID. I mean, we didn't really have it in terms of numbers. The UK still has more every day than any of the other places did, and they had months lockdown. But they just panicked and just said, right, everyone needs it. And there were loads of issues with AstraZeneca and things like that. So they just didn't have the resources here. They didn't order it because they weren't. It wasn't the policy. And I mean, New Zealand's gone extremely hardcore as well. And I've got friends over there who are really scared because they can't go and do anything.
But at the same time, it's also been incredibly isolating because I just keep going back to that story where the only adult you've been allowed to see in your life was your ex-partner. Like you've got this thing where people are, you don't get necessarily that you're isolated as an adult, keeping your family together. Yeah, I just think there's so much there as well, isn't there, about isolation, even within the collectivism.
Yeah, but I guess it's the collective decision to isolate, or the collective, decisions around whether to travel, how much to travel, how much contact to have. The loss of spontaneity and new, because those questions that are through the lens of COVID at the moment are really about, can we act collectively? Collectivism seems to have become associated with authoritarianism, and what's happening seems to be this conflation of the idea that we might have some collective action that takes away personal freedoms, and perhaps it does. If we can't agree about it, but it does seem that to address the climate issues also requires. But I don't want it to sort of land for my children. They're beginning to launch into the world.
And you don't want the world to be limited.
Well, yeah. What will happen? That's my worst nightmare, that they never leave home. That's what we say in psychotherapy.
We have to go through it. Can't go under it. Can't go under it. No, we've had it lots of times today, like 3 times in a row. I think we had it before. You can read it, because I'm talking to my friend. Yesterday, we have had a day of complex sentences, like a swish, like real. I know.
Speech has moved on since I last talked to you a few days ago.
Yeah, it's like it's just one of those things. Suddenly you just get this shift, and it's the next stage.
Yes, amazing. I had last night, my 2 girls went to a gig with each other,
That's grown up.
They had all kinds of COVID pass shenanigans to get through. Anyway, they managed it.
They have a good time.
They had a very good time. What makes family, I suppose.
And in a way, we've spoken into that today. I mean, today's recording, in essence, speaks into those. It's Bobby's wallet. Let me just wipe your face. You've got blueberry on your eyebrows. You do it. You wipe your face and your mouth. Blub, 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 blub. Blub, blub, blub. Look, there we are.
Time to goodbye. Time to goodbye.
Time to goodbye. And you're probably right. It was almost time to goodbye.
I think
It was-
you're
so
on
it was-
the table.
You are sitting up on the bench top, the work top. Shall we say goodbye?
No.
Thanks, Melissa. It's been lovely. Let's keep working and we'll chat again soon.
Yeah. Okay. Have a good day. Bye, Ginny.
Bye.
Good luck with your packing.
Thank you.
All right. Speak
See you.
soon.
Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.